On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, Lane Hutson thrills the Bell Center at the first rookie showcase game.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1140 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube and wherever you subscribe to your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode, which is incredibly important this week as we go back to 5 episodes a week. So you're not going to want to miss an episode here at Locked On Canadiens. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of Sunday Ticket from the NFL and from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Ian Boisvert, also known as @MaybeiTsIan, and I am joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick. Laura, I know you were at the game on Saturday afternoon. How did it feel to have hockey back at the Bell Center?
It was really fun. I kept turning to my friend and going, I love hockey so much. It's so fun to be watching live. I really want to thank our listener, Justin, for sending over those tickets. Really, really appreciate it. It might be the only Habs game I get to go to this year, given that, the Habs games usually cost a mint, an arm and a leg. But just being in the arena, and the seats were pretty great. I was able to see on the ice, and we'll get into some observations from the game, I know, in the second segment. But I managed to, I think, learn a lot just by being there. And it was a very different experience because usually you're analyzing with TV and there's always, play-by-play and opinions to disagree with, et cetera, et cetera. But in the moment, it was really fun. And I have a lot to say about the players. And so obviously today we're doing the game one. We're recording this before game two. Our game two observations will be on the Tuesday episode.
Yes. So each game will be staggered by 2 days for you guys. So, and I figure there's enough to talk about game one where it would have been weird to try to do them both in one shot. So we're going to give you our full thoughts on game one here. And I think the most appropriate place to start is with the guy everyone's talking about after game one, and that's Lane Hutson. How it seemed like he was kind of one of the players that the building became more electric as he carried the puck. It seemed like everybody in that building knew who had the puck when he had it. What was that sort of experience like watching him skate around, in a Montreal Canadiens jersey on Bell Center ice?
I think, it was very evident that this is the most ready player. It was very, very evident. I know there's a lot of comments about his skating, and I agree that his explosive skating is nothing to write home about. And I do think the Canadiens kind of need to work on that explosive speed. But his edge work is fantastic, and those fake outs were so good. He just looked so much smarter than everybody on the ice. And I know we did comment on this privately, Ian, but it felt like he gave Logan Mailloux brain cells just by virtue of playing with him.
Yeah.
And that's literally how it looked. And it's not to say, that the other players didn't look good. I know we're going to get into a little bit more in our later segments, and I'm very excited to mention a couple of names, but he just looked the most ready. And it's no surprise, he's literally played NHL games, right? So I think that was the biggest thing. He looked smarter than anybody on the ice. It's weird because he did not look small. He's clearly small. You look at him, he looks smaller than the ice, but when he was playing, he did not look like he played small. He was able to control the game. He was able to get the opponents as well as his teammates into the positions or scenarios that he wanted them to, because he's just so fast at thinking. And I just think that, it is, yes, he's playing against a bunch of rookies. Yes, a whole bunch of these guys aren't going to see the NHL for years sometimes or ever. But it just felt to me that he took over the game whenever he was on the ice.
Yeah, and it's, we've always been pretty bullish on his, stocks to make the NHL this season, just because the skill set that he brings is something the Canadiens do not have, right? Mike Matheson can do that from time to time, can go on a rush and, make a good play, but it's usually a one-off. It's usually he does that, they get a scoring chance, or they don't, and they give up a goal, and that's it. It ends.
Yeah.
Especially on the goal where he set up Tyler Thorpe. He got a secondary assist on Tyler Thorpe's goal. It was a sustained pressure from Lane Hutson. He went in, It didn't work. He bailed back out to center to play to be responsible defensively. When the puck got cleared to center, hey, look who's got it again. It's Lane Hutson. And he tries to push in over the blue line. We were going to go offside. Let me circle back. Okay, now I'm going back in. And he makes a pass to the center, and that player gets it to Tyler Thorpe, and they score a goal. So it's nice to see that, he's not just, pure skill set. Like, it's not just the physical attributes of his game, his hands, his feet. It's his brain, the way that he's thinking it. I think that was on full display on Saturday afternoon. And if you've got that aspect of your game and the talent that Lane Hutson already has, there's not all that much left before I can be like, yeah, this is an NHL player.
Yeah,
I think,
absolutely.
do you think it's I'm always catching myself because it's the first rookie showcase game of rookie training camp, and I'm already saying this guy should be on the NHL team. Do you think it's too early for us to be doing that, or is it perfectly reasonable for us to start having these conversations about Lane Hutson?
No, I think we should, because then we can see how it changes with every preseason game, how it changes after rookie game 2, and then after every preseason game, how it changes, and then we see where they end up. What was really interesting is Pascal Vincent at the end of in his post-game media availability said, it's not what you're seeing. It's not just what you're seeing when you watch him on the ice. It's the energy that he brings on the bench and in the dressing room. Which I thought was like really interesting, is that, like with hockey, there's so many intangibles, et cetera, et cetera. Like the team seems to really benefit from his presence on many different levels and in many different ways. And I really do think, though, that if the Canadiens were to invest a little bit in a skating coach for him, it's not too late, right? Like, his edge work is there, his pivoting is there. It's just that explosive straight line speed. And in that scenario, like, that was when you could look, when they obviously they had him paired up with Logan Mailloux, and you could just see how much faster Logan Mailloux was in those moments when they were either going up the ice or down the ice. You could tell there was a little bit of a difference there. Not that you should be comparing these two players. They're two very, very different players. I just felt that was the one thing where people were like, oh, he wasn't that great in the defensive zone. I disagreed with that. And I think the reason that people thought that is just because in the offensive moments, scenarios, zone, whatever, he was just so good that when you're comparing the defensive game to that, but like, there were so many more defensive lapses on other players, etc.
Yeah, and I think the straight line speed aspect of this was on full display in this game, especially in overtime, where he could have had 2 clear-cut breakaways if his straight line explosive speed was just a touch better, right?
Yeah,
He came in
just
the
a
first
little
time.
bit.
I mean, the first one, he came in a little slightly down the right wall. He got knocked down, fell on top of the puck, got back up, and still made a play to the his teammate at in the slot. The second one, he would have just had a clear-cut breakaway if he just
If it
had
was just a little bit faster.
a half step faster. Yeah, like, we're not even talking about adding like a full other gear to his speed. But
Yeah.
if he can just get a tiny bit faster, he's going to create so many more just complete breakaways. I was just excited to see that, even though they were in overtime and they went with 2 defensemen and 1 forward, which makes sense for this roster because holy cow, the defensemen are so good. But it was still nice to see them decide, okay, just because we have 2 defensemen doesn't mean Lane Hutson's just going to stay behind his blue line the entire game. We're sending him in on the attack. He's going to lead our attack in overtime, which is not something we've seen a ton of in Montreal.
Yeah, and I don't know if you could see on TV, but in overtime, when he had that, that attempt at a breakaway, we're going to call it, the entire arena just stood up. And it was like adults and like children, right? Like, how does an 8-year-old know that this guy is going to be exciting and something special is going to happen, right? Like, everybody was just on their seat and they stood up and they're just like leaning over to watch. And I thought, like, that was just like, that's something that it transcends everything, right? Like, that ability that this player has to kind of captivate you. And so it's exactly like you said, half a step more. They need to work on it. And I don't think that it's something that they can't improve. I don't think they can transform it, but I don't think it's something the Canadiens can't improve. And also, it's not that, like, people are like, oh, he doesn't need it because he can fake people up. No, I think that you always should be working on yourself until the point that you're done with your career. You should always be bettering your game because your goal is to be the best player you possibly could be at any level. And at some point, NHLers are going to get used to players like Lane Hutson. They're going to get smarter about there's a few of them that are in the league now. So they really do need to work on that skating aspect just to give him the maximum potential to do the most damage.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, we're going to step aside for a second. When we come back, we're going to cover everything else that happened in game one. And we will do that in just a moment. All right, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day, with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get started here in the second segment of our show, we do want to mention that we're going to be taking our mailbag questions on Wednesday of this week. So get them in early. We'll send out a message across Twitter to let everybody know to send them in. So we're going to be recording that episode Wednesday for your Friday morning commute. Let's get back into game one of the rookie showcase. Let's start with the uniforms, I think, because I think it was a pretty big contrast between the Montreal Canadiens and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Montreal wore their full home uniforms, even designated captains for the game. And the Toronto Maple Leafs chose to go with their practice uniforms that said "Property of Toronto Maple Leafs" on the front. What do you make of that decision by both teams?
I think it's two extremely different approaches. But I don't like that old school mentality from the Leafs. I'm not just saying this because, the Habs went a different way. I'm saying this as a person who knows what it takes to get the best out of the people who work for you, right? And treating them like they're lesser than is not the way to do it, right? Being hard on them, like that old school mentality of thinking, and I know it's hockey, blah, 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 that there's like honor and earning and blah. It's stupid. Right? You give these players a taste of what it looks like when you are a Montreal Canadien. You make them feel that way. Like when we were in the arena, right? There was like before they came out, there was like for like a full minute, the video was just on them in the hallway. I don't know if you could see that on TV. I'm not sure, but you could see them in the hallway and you could see that nervous excitement on the team, right? And this is a rookie showcase game. All of these players know that there's a minute chance they're going to make the NHL, except for Lane Hutson. They're going to make the NHL this year or next year. Some might take 2 years or never get there, right? But you could tell how excited they were. Like we literally, my friend and I turned to each other and be like, imagine being in that hallway right now, right? And it felt like to me that the Canadiens, what they did was like this year, they're like, we'll bring you in, we'll make you feel what it feels like to be an NHLer. And then you get a taste of it. And then like, it's your reward for working hard, right? Like these players got invited. Not everybody got an invite. These players got invited. These players were told like, here's your opportunity, right? Like they're given an opportunity and this is what it's going to look like when your life is this way. And I think that that's a great approach. Like we can talk about the captain's thing in a second. Whereas with the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're essentially being like, you're not good enough. Like when you start that conversation by saying you're not good enough, what are you expecting from the people?
Yeah.
Right? Like that it just to me, like those kinds of things make me really angry. Like I know that everybody has to be disciplined. I know everybody has to do the work, but these players are literally doing the work. They want to be millionaires one day, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're there for. Their families have spent so much money preparing them for moments like this. They got drafted by an NHL team. It means they're better than most of their peers. And it means that they've put in work, they've put in money, they've put in time, they've put in that discipline. Like random people are not waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to a practice 2 hours away. That's not happening, or a game, in a different city. That's the part that really bothered me about this, is that you're starting the message by saying you're not good enough, as opposed to starting the message by saying, here's what you're in for if you succeed.
Yeah. And I mean, the preseason games, from regular training camp. None of those guys have officially made the team, and I doubt they're going to wear practice jerseys for all of their preseason games,
There
right?
you
So
go.
it seems like a very ham-fisted way of doing the whole, well, you haven't earned this yet, which I think is it,
They
you
know.
haven't earned this yet. They know that. It's
They know
rookie
that they
camp. They're
just
not.
look at their paycheck. Like,
Yeah, just because we say hockey players can't read doesn't mean we think like they can't, understand.
understand.
They can't read the room. They understand what they're doing. Um, but getting back to this on the Canadian side of things, they named captains before this.
Yeah.
Logan Mailloux wore the C, and the two A's were Owen Beck and Sean Farrell. I don't know that I necessarily love the idea of naming rookie captains when you're wearing a full uniform, because now it looks like if you just took a picture of that, Logan Mailloux was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. Like, it looks very bizarre. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't look right.
Yeah. So Pascal Vincent was asked about it and was like, like, how is it? And then he was like, oh, no, they, like, we didn't announce it or anything. Like, they just came into the dressing room and saw their jerseys as they were. And they thought, like, based on their personalities during the last couple of practices or games or whatever it is that they, the camp, like, that's what they base that decision on. For me, I thought it felt like, I don't know what Logan Mailloux is like on the ice generally, because I haven't watched him in action in Laval, but he, like, those three players were doing a lot of communicating on the ice, right? Whereas a lot of the others weren't. And I don't know if it's due to lack of experience or if it's like the leadership or not. Like, the others were a lot more quiet, but they were so communicative with their teammates, with each other. So I wonder, like, is it the effect of putting the letter on there, or was the letter on there because that's what they're like in general, right?
Yeah, and I don't think that's something we'll know the answer of until we kind of see them, all play within the Canadian system. I think that's one of the things about these rookie showcase games that drives me nuts is, like, these guys have never played together, and the hockey is generally not very good.
No.
And for the first half of this game, I think that was true. But for the second half of this game, it was a really fun hockey game. I was really enjoying myself towards the
Yeah,
end of this game.
absolutely.
Montreal falls 4-3 in a shootout. I think that's the first time we've mentioned the score, because it doesn't matter. Montreal falls 4-3 in the shootout to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They were down 3-1 at one point.
It was 3-1.
Toronto, it was 3-1. It always will be. Montreal gets goals from, I believe, let's see, Adam Engstrom, Tyler Thorpe, and Owen
Owen
Beck. The Tyler Thorpe and Owen Beck shots were NHL caliber shots. I mean, the Owen Beck one, he shot it right through Dennis Hill to be the goalie for Toronto, and it still made it in. Like, I don't know how that puck got in, other than it was shot with 1,000,000 pounds of force.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the things I took away from this game, is that a lot of these guys are incomplete players, but a lot of them have NHL caliber shots. Tyler Thorpe is an incredibly, one-dimensional player at this point, but that one dimension is his shot, and holy cow, it's very good. Like,
I loved him though. Like, that was the thing. Like,
yeah,
I
I did
told you,
too.
like, I really loved him because he was so annoying. He
Yeah.
was like, and every time you looked, like, there was some Maple Leaf trying to, like, shove him. I didn't really learn all the Maple Leafs names because I don't really care at this point. But like, he was just in their faces. He was so annoying to them, and you could tell, right? Like, there were a couple players that really got under their skin, and one of them was Tyler Thorpe. And I was like, I love this guy. I hope he gets good enough to play in the NHL, because he's going to be so annoying. Like, that's, so he has two dimensions to his game. His shot is great, and also he's very annoying. So I would love to see him play, for example, against the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, I think he'll be sort of built for that sort of thing. Tyler Thorpe, unfortunately, towards the end of the game, took a pretty big hit around center ice. Got right back up, but it looked like he might have been favoring his wrist. Skated off. I don't know if we saw him the rest of the game, and I don't know if the Canadiens have put anything out to this point. By the time you're listening to this on Monday, we may know already, but as of right now, it's unclear where he's at, but hopefully he's able to recover. And also, they announced after the game that Quentin Miller, the goaltender, suffered a shoulder injury in rookie camp and is going to have surgery this upcoming week and will be out 6 months. So one of my arguments against these rookie camps and the rookie showcases is that they're mostly just opportunities for unforced injuries. And, this one didn't even happen in a game, the one to Quentin Miller, but the one to Tyler Thorpe certainly did. It was a guy running him over at center ice, which almost is an ill-advised decision by that guy, because Tyler Thorpe's massive.
Yeah.
So, these things happen. Any final parting thoughts on the game before we jump into our final segment?
I mean, we're going to talk about specific players in that game, but I do think that overall the hockey got a lot better.
Yeah,
And I did want to talk about the Florian Jack, I think, because it literally was less than 2 minutes before he dropped the gloves. And what was really funny is in the post game, Pascal Vincent was like, "None of us asked him to do it. We didn't say we're not encouraging them." He went like that, and then he said the really funny thing was like he had a game plan, and I guess he stuck to it, which I thought was really, really funny. Because that he walked into that game waiting for that opportunity to drop the gloves, and then after
right.
that, I did think that the officials were a lot better at preventing stuff like that, because there were some moments where
Sure.
like Owen Protz was in danger of getting into something, and even Sean Farrell at one point like really wanted to kill a man, right? But I thought that was really funny, and I thought it was really cute that after the game, Arbor Jack, I found him and told him good job.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know both his parents were there too, so must have been a pretty fun day in Montreal for the Jack Eyes. All right, we'll head into our last segment here, where we're going to take a look at the players who played in Game One and determine if their stocks are rising or falling, and we'll get into that in just a moment. All right, into our final segment, we're taking a look at the players in Game One of the Rookie Showcase who played, and whether or not we determined if their stocks are rising and falling. I want to start with the defenseman because that's where I think most of the focus is here.
Yes.
This is going to be a layup. Laura, are you
Okay.
ready for the first one?
Yes.
This is Lane Hutson. Is his stock rising or falling?
His stock is through the roof at the moment.
Meteoric. Like he's just. I don't think it's ever coming back down.
Yeah.
Logan Mailloux, his partner in this game.
Okay, so here's the thing with Logan Mailloux is that he was unremarkable. He
Yeah,
didn't do anything brilliant, but he was solid.
yeah,
Like he made one really boneheaded mistake and it didn't even cost a goal. So I would say it's neutral with Logan Mailloux, because I think we said at the beginning it's going to be out of preseason. He's going to maybe make a name for himself, but we expect AHL and NHL time for him this year. I'm going to stick with that.
yeah. I think I'm grading on a curve with him a little bit
Hmm.
because I'm first watch. I was like, man, I haven't really noticed him. And then
Yeah,
later on in the day, I was thinking, man, I didn't really notice him, like in a good
exactly.
way,
Yeah.
because yes, he's very explosive offensively, and you want to recognize him in those ways. But when your partner is Lane Hutson, who's carrying the mail for 60 minutes, like you don't have to be. You just have to be responsible defenseman. And
Yeah.
I
And
thought
he
he did a
was.
great right.
Yeah.
He did a great job filling that role.
Yeah.
So my stock on him is rising because it shows he's understanding the moment he's in, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a big change from last preseason where he's, trying to take on the Devils in a 1-on-4, shorthanded situation and just completely throwing the play away.
Yeah.
So I think, he's showing a little bit more patience and understanding of the moment.
Yeah. A bit more
Um,
maturity.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Adam Engstrom. This is
Oh,
my first viewing of him. So what did you think about Adam Engstrom?
my for in my mind, his stock rose a lot. He did a
Yeah.
good job. He I think what he did was you could tell that they were all nervous at the beginning, but he was able to recover the fastest from all the defensemen, other than Lane Hudson. So, like, we're removing Lane Hudson from this conversation because you're comparing him to like Mayu, everyone else. Let's say everyone else who's there. And he really, I think he recovered quickly from his
Yeah.
nerves and quicker than Owen Beck, a player that you would expect more from.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, yeah, I'm maybe a slightly up. It's hard to score a goal and see your stock go down.
Yeah.
Um, David Reinbacher.
Not ready.
Yep, I think
Yeah.
he's flatlining. I don't think
Yeah.
he's going up or down. We're sort of this is who David Reinbacher is. He
He's
looked
not
pretty
ready.
uneasy at times in this game. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and again, it's my opinion that I don't want to see him in the NHL at all.
This
This
year.
should
Yeah.
be these games in the preseason should be the only time we see him in a Canadiens jersey this season.
Absolutely. I think one thing I will say though is that his conditioning looked best out of all of the players on the ice, including the Leafs. Like
Yep.
he's done a lot of work on that front. Like he looks like the best condition. It could be also that he's one of the youngest. I don't know. I don't think so. I think they're all like in the same.
Yeah.
But I was so impressed with that. But I thought his mental game it took him a long time to get over the nerves. He made a couple good plays at the beginning. He took that penalty and then he seemed to unravel after the penalty, and it took him a long time to get back on track. He needs to grow up is all. He's young. It's early. He's going to be fine. I just don't think he's ready yet.
Yep, his decision making seemed a tad slow, which was putting him in a lot of unfavorable situations. So that's again something that they'll work on. He hasn't played a ton of North American hockey, so I'm not all that concerned to this point. Owen Protz, the last of the defensemen I'll ask about. I know you're a big supporter of him.
Yes, I am a big supporter of him as a concept. I just didn't see that much from him. They didn't play him enough, I don't think. I didn't see all that much. I thought it was okay. I didn't hate his game, but I wasn't overwhelmed by how good it was or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a pest, right? Like that's the kind of player you're hoping that he'll be. Yeah. Some players need to grow into that a little bit. And he was literally just drafted. I'm not all that concerned that he won't.
Also, the officials were really doing their jobs.
Yeah.
That was my observation.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into the forwards. Owen Beck, easy one for me.
It's interesting because he was very quiet at the beginning. I thought he was also, the moment was getting the better of him. That's what I thought at the beginning, but he recovered really well. It might have been a chemistry thing more than anything else. Like I thought as the game went on and towards the end of the game, he became so much better than everyone else. Like I think his recovery, I wouldn't say was faster, but the distance was the distance it traveled was a lot further.
Yeah, I thought the top six as a whole started slow.
Yeah.
But he really picked it up, especially in the third period. Like he was trying to win that game for Montreal Canadiens in that one. So stock is definitely rising on Owen Beck. Yeah. I was a little worried at the beginning because we sort of talked him up last week as like, he needs to show that he's done with this, right?
Yeah.
And I think early on he didn't, but I think that's a product of, hey, haven't played organized hockey in months.
And these are the first time I played with these guys. Yeah.
Correct.
They talked about it a lot, all of them actually.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's a big part of this people don't consider. Sean Farrell, his line mate.
Stock is neutral. I expected him to be in the in the AHL this year. I want him to make the NHL, but I don't think he's done anything. But it's not like he's like a terrible player or anything. I thought he was fine.
Yeah, no, same there. I won't spend too much time there. Philip Meshar.
Okay, this one's really interesting because you look at him and you think, okay, he had a quiet game, right?
Yeah.
But he was one of the best, if not the best, passers on the ice. I was noticing. Like as a whole, the team was very sloppy with their passing. I didn't love it. I thought like the Leafs were much better than them on that front. And there were lots of players where you were like, oh, that could have been a great thing if you only weren't passing to like the neutral, ice or whatever. Right. The quality of his plays, the quality of his shot was fantastic. The quality of his passing was fantastic. I don't think that he was swallowed up by the game by any means, but I still felt that overall, he didn't really make a mark. And that was the issue that I had with him, is that I want so badly for this player to make it. And I wasn't seeing that. But I did feel that the quality of his playing, like the skills that he had were like very good.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think, he's sort of a victim of the situation of a rookie camp where you haven't played with a ton of these guys. And if you're a playmaker, it's difficult to set up plays when you don't know where any of the guys around you are going to be. So I'm still kind of low on him as a prospect, just as a culmination of everything we've seen to this point. But I'm not down on him so much to the point where I'm saying that his stock is falling. Nope. Last one, I want to get some Tyler Thorpe thoughts because I think I think his stock is rising after this one. That shot is incredible. I really think that if he's an NHL specialist and he comes in and he's the third line player, but when he has a shot like that, holy cow, like his stock is rising to me.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, and that was the thing is that like, when I was watching him, like in my mind, I was like, oh, this guy's going to be my favorite Laval Rocket one day. I didn't think, this guy's going to be an NHLer one day. I did think, I was like, this guy's going to be my favorite Laval Rocket one day. I do think there were a couple of moments where I felt that he, you're talking about a shot, like he picked his position, he picked his like his spot. And I thought he was smart about that, even if he didn't end up scoring a goal in those moments. I was like, okay, at least he knows that this is his thing and he needs to optimize the chances of it. So I thought, oh, look where he is on the ice. Like it felt right to me. And that was just a couple of moments, but like, I just love what a pest he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. All right, we got to get into some trivia before we call it a
Yes.
day here.
Can
So
you remind us what our last trivia question was?
absolutely. So if you listened last week, you know that we're going to be asking some trivia questions every episode. We'll ask you the question towards the end of the episode, and then give you the answer from the following episode. So here was Friday's question. In the 2006-7 season, Sheldon Surrey set the record for the most power play goals in a season by a defenseman with 19. En route to claiming the record, he dethroned 3 defensemen who were tied with 11 such goals. Who were these players? And the answer here was Patrice Brisebois in 2000-2001, Matthew Schneider in 93-94, and Guy Lapointe in 74-75. So a pretty fun group of defensemen there. I know Patrice Brisebois didn't have the easiest time in Montreal, but I think his numbers kind of speak for himself, when it comes to his impact in Montreal.
When you're an offensive defenseman, that's kind of how it goes. But listeners, when Ian asked this question, he doesn't tell me the questions beforehand because I want to know if I can get them. And I guess only one of them right, and that was Guy Lapointe. Never in a million years would I have thought it would have been Brisebois. And then with Matthew Schneider, it was when I found that out, I was like, oh, I should have guessed that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But and it's funny, both those guys were late 90s or mid to late 90s players who came back in like the mid 2000s. Like Matthew Schneider came back for a cup of coffee in Montreal, I think, as like a playoff rental. So I was just as shocked by that answer, when I learned it. So today's question, people often credit the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers with playing the first outdoor NHL game in 2003 at the first Heritage Classic, but that is untrue. Where was the first outdoor game played in the NHL prior to that Heritage Classic? So chew on that for a day. We'll be back with our answer in the next episode. But that's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to the Locked On NHL podcast. They give us coverage on the league as a whole. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. We're taking our mailbag questions for Wednesdays, so get them in. You can follow the show on Twitter at LO_Canadiens or email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. You can find Laura at The Actor Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you tomorrow.